That's your job. Govern the state of Alabama and try to make decisions that advance the interests of Alabama's people, not just to go down there and do what lobbyists and funders want you to do.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
We're an Alabama radio program, and the Alabama legislative session is going to be starting here.
I think exactly 1 month from today. 1 month from today.
So it starts in February.
Yeah, February 6th. Tuesday,
Jeez.
February 6th, I believe.
Jeez. Yeah. So never a good thing when a supermajority Republican legislature meets for a legislative session. And two of the two biggest items on the agenda probably are Medicaid expansion and school privatization. So Medicaid expansion is going to be a little bit of a quicker explanation, I think. We have a little bit less to say about that because it's so obvious, like, it's difficult to kind of figure out what the opposition is to that. So Adam, tell us what the state of play is, or remind us Medicaid expansion. What is that? What's going on there? How would it benefit or not benefit? Maybe it's terrible. Some people say it's terrible, Adam. So explain to us Medicaid expansion. What is that? And then talk to us about the state of play that you're expecting to see in the legislature in this session, which you know a lot about, being in Alabama Arise, Northeast Alabama organizer for Alabama Arise. So this is like actually part of your job. So
yeah. Alabama Rise is kind of the leader of the Cover Alabama Coalition, which is the leading voice for Medicaid expansion in the state. And in terms of what Medicaid expansion is and why it's important, let's start there. So, we had the Affordable Care Act was passed many years ago. And as part of that, an expanded form of Medicaid was offered, but it was up to the states to decide whether or not to do that. And Alabama is one of 10 states that has chosen not to expand Medicaid. And you won't be surprised to hear that most of those are in the South, right? Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, etc. And so what this would do is the federal government pays for the vast majority of the expanded Medicaid. The state would have to kick in a little bit extra. And by doing so, you would cover a lot of people who are right now in the health insurance coverage gap. They make too much money to qualify for Medicaid as it is, but not enough money to have decent health care, right? Not enough money to get subsidies on the healthcare exchange. Maybe they don't get health care through their employer, which is a surprisingly large amount of people, especially here in Alabama. And so Medicaid expansion would cover those people who are in that gap, primarily the working poor, people who are working, but they're struggling to get by. Medicaid expansion in Alabama would cover almost 300,000 additional people. And that is just huge if you think about nearly 300,000 of our neighbors getting health care, and like healthcare being less of a concern for them, and less of a stressor for them, and being able to stay healthy, and stay in the workforce, stay in their community, and just participate in their lives. And so it would save lives if we expanded Medicaid, right? Because every year those people who lack health insurance, some of them suffer and die because of that. And that's something we have to be real about. So it would save lives, it would improve lives, but then there's the economic impact of it. Many of our rural hospitals are closing or on the verge of closure. Medicaid expansion would stimulate those hospitals and keep them around. It would create thousands of new jobs. The Public Affairs Council of Alabama, PARCA, released a report called The Economic Impact of Expanding Medicaid in Alabama. And they, along with Jacksonville State University, put out some information that over 6 years, it would yield a total savings of $2.38 billion. That's almost $400 million a year that the state would save. and that is more than enough to cover the cost. The estimated cost is about $225 million a year. That's about how much it would cost, is the best estimate. Less than $250 million a year, which is not a lot when you're talking about a state budget. But again, the savings would be about $400 million. Now, I am not a math wizard by any means. I taught history and not math for a reason in school, but 400 is bigger than 225, right? So I don't think there's any question that Medicaid expansion would pay for itself, particularly after the first year. And it would generate an annual economic impact of almost $2 billion, $1.89 billion. And because of that, it's not a surprise that most people are in favor of Medicaid expansion, especially when you explain what it would do, how it would help people, how it would grow the economy, how it would grow jobs, and how it would improve people's quality of life. So over 70% of voters support expanding Medicaid in Alabama. Over 70%. And that includes a majority of Republicans. Less than 20% actually said they opposed it. Less than 20%. So, that's huge. That's huge. An overwhelming majority, including majority of Republicans. So it should be a no-brainer. It's sad that we have gone all these years and have talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. I remember rumors that, Governor Bentley was going to expand Medicaid. And that's been some years now. And, as it stands right now, Alabama's Medicaid is about as restrictive as it comes in the country. You basically can't work. If you have a job, it's almost impossible to get Medicaid. So almost all the people who are on Medicaid in Alabama are children. And so this is a way to help working class people, working poor folks. Now, is it a magic bullet? Like, is it a golden solution? No, of course not. Personally, I believe in single payer healthcare. I believe that we should join the rest of the civilized world and have universal healthcare for all people in America. But in the meantime, as something that people in Alabama's elected offices can do, they can expand Medicaid. And this would help fast food workers, cooks, and restaurant servers. This would help cashiers. This would help carpenters and laborers, housekeepers, janitors, bus drivers, taxi drivers, barbers, mechanics, all sorts of people who are out here working without health care and with inadequate health care. And so it should be a no-brainer. That's a little bit about what it would do. Just in Madison County alone, over 10,000 people would gain health insurance.
Wow.
In Madison County alone, over $300 million economic impact. And now we hear politicians brag all the time about economic development, new projects that are coming to town, right? Usually because they're funneling subsidies and incentives into some corporation's pocket, right? And they brag about the economic impact. Well, this is providing economic impact, right? And if you say that's what you're about, that you want to grow Alabama's economy, that you want to grow the workforce in Alabama, right? Our workforce participation rate, that you want to have more jobs. If we all agree on that, then let's make this happen. It's well past time. Supposedly things are a little more receptive now than they used to be. But it's going to take the legislators speaking out to give the governor enough cover to do this, I believe. I think the governor has shown that, she's not necessarily going to step out on this issue. But if a number of the legislators, especially the leaders in the legislature, were to speak out and say, hey, let's do this, I think it really can happen in 2024. And it would be a huge improvement to the quality of life here in Alabama. Which, let's not forget, Alabama ranks at or near the bottom of every aspect of our quality of life. Every aspect. This is one policy solution that is a way to improve that. it doesn't hurt anyone. It just helps people while helping our economy at the same time. So let's make it happen.
It really is one of those policies that it's just difficult to understand the other side because it's so cut and dry that this would be a good thing for the people of Alabama.
20,000 new jobs. 20,000
Yeah.
new jobs. And we've had 14 hospitals closed since 2010.
Right.
How is that helping?
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And the arguments on the other side are just bonkers. I remember doing a segment last year during the last session where we were talking about this. This is one of those perennial topics: school privatization, Medicaid expansion, and the lottery. If there's an Alabama legislative session, those are going to be the 3 main topics.
Yeah,
I think.
we're talking about all 3 for sure.
And the although the lottery.
I'm saying
But yes,
in Alabama, we're going to be
Alabama,
talking
yeah.
about them every single legislative session.
But last year, and maybe when we clip this, I can get I can get Joe to put the audio into this video. But last year there was this legislator on a conservative radio program talking about this and explaining why he thought it was a bad idea. And he was saying that Medicaid expansion is a bad idea because it disincentivizes people from working, and like we're becoming a terrible country,
Right.
and it's just so like if you think about that for even just 2 seconds, just literally 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, you can understand how absurd that is,
Right.
Because who are the people that are out there in other states that are sitting at home thinking, well, I wonder if I should go to work and like provide for my family and provide for myself and give myself like just some amount of material comfort or anything like this. And then they think, no, I have Medicaid. What? Who is that? It's not even, it makes even less sense than the food stamp argument, right? Because the food stamp, I mean, at least with food stamps, there's like, oh, I've got food. If you've got food, then that's like, that's a big expense for people. But like healthcare, that's not, something that doesn't that.
It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
And the thing is, like, right now, the way Medicaid is structured is a disincentive to work because,
Right.
like I explained, if you have basically any income, a family of 3 must make less than $4,475 a year to qualify for Medicaid.
Right.
And so if you make pretty much anything, you don't qualify for it as it is. Whereas
Right.
under expanded Medicaid, this would be primarily working people who have jobs, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs, right, but don't have any health care at these jobs. Think about the folks who are working Uber and fast food and all these other different hustles that they're, piecing together to try to make a living. It's not going to disincentivize them. If anything, it's going to increase workforce participation. That's what we've seen in the states that have expanded, which makes sense, right? Because if people can go to the doctor, if they can get medication that they require, they can stay a little bit healthier. They can stay in the workforce. There are some people who, if they do not have their medication, they will not be functional adults.
Yeah.
There are some people, if they do not get regular treatment, they cannot function in the workforce. So why wouldn't we want more people to have that when there is money on the table to make it happen? And so, we shouldn't let ideology get in the way of common sense.
Right. And conversely, so his argument is that, if you give people health care and then they're going to have health care whether or not they work, then they'll just choose not to work because there's no incentive. Because there's no incentive to work because you have health care. So like if you have a heart attack, conversely, like you said, and I just want to underline that because it's important. Conversely, the way that Medicaid is structured right now does disincentivize work, because if instead of whether you work or not, you have health care, if instead of that, the situation that you have is either you work or you have health care, well, that equation is a lot different, right? That equation is a hell of a lot different. If you have to choose between an income, and especially if you are a person that has like a disability, or for some reason like you require health care to live constantly, that equation is much different. And it is incentivizing you to stay home, to not be productive. Because if you go and be a little bit productive, then the state takes away the very thing that you need to stay alive, right? So that's how absurd the argument that giving people Medicaid would disincentivize work is. It is not only just laughably untrue, it is actually, in fact, the opposite of true.
Right. And, the other big thing is, oh, well, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? Well, I've already explained to you that it's really a drop in the bucket, a couple $100 million, and the savings alone, the economic impact of these people having jobs, these jobs that are created, the people that are paying taxes now, the savings with prisoner health care, the savings everywhere in the system. So it's going to pay for itself. But even if you don't believe that, if you say that's too good to be true, okay, we're on the hook for an extra $200 million. And in exchange, we're saving lives. We're improving lives. Literally hundreds of thousands of people's lives would be changed overnight. And then you think about all the families and the businesses that they will support and the communities they live in, right? The multiplier effect, it's really huge. So, okay, you're on the hook for that. It seems like a pretty good investment from where I'm standing as a taxpayer. And the thing is, you find a way to pay for whatever it is that you want every year. The state is currently looking into these mega prisons. They can afford that, right? Apparently they can afford that. And so it just, it really bothers me. There are so many different ways to raise revenue. Yeah, Alabama raises the 50th amount in tax revenue per capita. Crazy. We're the lowest, and you get what you pay for. It's obvious. Drive our roads, go to our schools, look at our government services and infrastructure. It's very obvious that we raise the lowest amount of taxes per revenue. Or per capita, and so obviously there's room to change that. You mentioned the lottery. There's lottery and gambling and marijuana and all these other ways that you could raise revenue without forcing a tax on anyone. If you wanted to, if you were serious about it, more than enough to pay for that. More than enough. And so that's your job, is to govern the state of Alabama and try to make decisions that advance the interest of Alabama's people. I mean, theoretically, that's your job, not just to go down there and do what lobbyists and funders want you to do. You should consider how your decisions impact your neighbors and your constituents.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.